argue, this sounds fuller because it's more spread out. This sounded to me, weaker because of the G is on the top, the third of the chord rather than the root of the chord, the E flat. The E with the E flat in the top, and it's the root of the chord. It's the first scale degree. It's gonna sound more final. So out of these two options, that it just depends on which, if that's what you're going for. You just have to decide which one you like the sound of better. As far as the crowd project goes, or your homework assignment, both would be right, and it's whatever one you, in the moment, if it's like at 5 in the morning and you're still doing your work, whatever gets you through that assignment, fine. But if you take your time and you like really put some energy into, or like say, you know, you actually have some time to do that, that's where you can be a little bit more thoughtful and creative with it, for sure.
I will say, like, the more that I've thought about it, one of the standout third on top voicings that I can think of is the end of Happy Together by the Turtles. And that's a very iconic and powerful end to me. So I think it just depends on how it's carried out.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
I think it is, I'm pretty sure. I think the
ba-ba-bum-bum,
like that,
okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the third's on top.
See, and that's awesome that you made that association with that, because that's really how, like for me and I think a lot of people do, is like, yeah, we do all this theory on the board, and it's kind of like math. It looks right, you know, you feel good that you did everything successfully. But if you're not associating with the actual sounds of the chord, then you're kind of missing out on that extra layer. And that's where I think the real good composers are, like, you just have to, and you have to hear it. And whether you play it at the piano, and it is one thing to play it at the piano or on your guitar or whatever, but when you hear it, that's why we analyze music as well. You take a look at a piece of music, and you listen to the piece of music, and you're like, oh, they're ending with the third in the chord. That's the sound that, you know, that resonates there, so that, you know, now you have a really good idea. Every time you have a third in the chord, that chord that you heard from the turtle, like, it just, you hear it, you're like, that's the sound I want, you know? Yeah.
Would you use like a different chord based on the style of the music?
Yeah, definitely. With this style of music that we're writing for, this would be in the Baroque period, so everything that we're using right now are all triads. So as opposed to using 7 chords or any kind of extensions right now, and it is all root position as well. So we're very limited with our style, but yeah, the style. So when for me, hearing dominant 7th chords, the first thing like I'll think of is like the blues, because it's very heavy to hear dominant 7 chords as opposed to triads. You hear that flat 7. That sound of that dominant 7 chord kind of resonates with me from the style of blues. So yeah, and then like a lot of jazz will use major 7 chords. So and kind of associating that with and a lot of times the end of songs, like you mentioned in the Turtles here. So yeah, the style of music will, if you understand what types of chords the style of music is doing, then that kind of lends your ear to associate chords with the sounds of the chords with that style of music as well. Yeah, good. Other questions? Thoughts on this page of the homework? All right, let's do a little review because it'll be on the exam. Wednesday. Let's go check it. Alright. I'll make this a little bigger. Alright, find the errors. Now, the bottom. Okay. This is a little different than what we've done with our assignments and what will be on the exam. In this exercise, they're just saying all of these errors are possible, but they're not saying that these are the errors that you'll find specifically, unlike the homework and on the test where I tell you exactly what errors you're gonna find. So this is just, at this point, I'd say let's go from chord to chord. So let's look at all the voice pairs, right? So we have C, E flat, G, C, G, B flat, G, D. Voice pair one, like I said, I usually pick with the bass and work my way up. So I got bass and tenor, C and E flat, they're a third apart, they're going in contrary motion to another third apart. That's fine. Here in the bass and the alto, C and a G, that's a perfect fifth. Red flag, alright, if they stay on a perfect fifth, then we got parallel fifths, or contrary fifths if they go in the opposite direction, but they're moving to octaves, oblique motion. And now we have the bass and the soprano, octaves, again, red flag if they stay on octaves, but they move to the fifths, so that looks alright. Now my second group of voice pairs, we got tenor and alto, oblique motion, tenor and soprano, contrary motion, alto, soprano, contrary motion. So there are no parallel fifths or parallel octaves, parallel fifths, direct octave or direct fifth. So bass and soprano gonna be moving in the same direction. They are moving in the same direction. They're moving into a perfect fifth. Is this a direct fifth? Why?
Is the C and the A on the first beat, is that it?
No, I'm still talking about the C to G here and the C to D here. And the soprano bass. We gotta be moving in the same direction. The resulting interval is a perfect fifth. Is that enough to make it a direct octave? Or I'm sorry, direct fifth.
Does the soprano have to like compete?
There it is. That's the final thing. And the soprano has to leap into it, but it's not. It's moving by steps, so this is not a direct fifth. Octaves by contrary motion, fifths by contrary motion. I think we already said there wasn't any of that motion happening. Unacceptable unequal fifths, that didn't happen. What would we be looking for with unacceptable unequal fifths?
We need our notes. Diminished fifth to the perfect fifth involving the bass.
Involving the bass. So it's gonna look like parallel fifths at first. And then you'd have to look and one of them would have to be a diminished fifth going to a perfect fifth as opposed to a perfect fifth going to a perfect fifth. The perfect fifth going to a perfect fifth, that's parallel fifths. You have diminished fifth going to a perfect fifth, now we have unequal, and it has to involve bass. So a lot of stipulations there. Spacing error, this could look like a spacing error, but it's between the base and the tenor, so they could be as far apart. So I don't see anything wrong with this the first motion of the first two chords. So we're gonna say this is okay, and we got it correct. Alright. Next chord. We have our G, B flat, G, D, moving to A, F sharp, C. Alright. So again, voice pairs. Tenor, bass, contrary motion, looks good. Bass and alto, octaves. But they're moving the contrary motion to a sixth, so that looks alright. Bass and soprano, a fifth, moving in contrary motion to a sixth. A third. A to C is a third. Alright, how about my tenor and my alto? B flat to G is a sixth, moving in parallel motion to a sixth. That looks alright. B flat to D is a third, moving in parallel motion to another third, A to C. Looks okay. Alto and soprano, G to D is a perfect fifth. F sharp to C. What kind of fifth is that? Diminished fifth. So is this okay?
It doesn't involve.
Doesn't involve the bass. So it wouldn't be one of our unacceptable, or it is acceptable unequal fifth, so that wouldn't be the case. So I actually think that we are, well, again, check for direct fifth or direct octave, but the bass is soprano moving in opposite direction, so at that point we can exclude that. No spacing there, I think we're okay again. Yes, alright. See if we get a mistake on the next one. Alright, now we gotta go from our A, F sharp, C to our B flat, G, D. Anybody see any errors? Leo?
First off, we can't have unison moving together.
Yes.
Parallel octaves technically.
Parallel octaves, right. They won't say parallel unisons, we call it parallel octaves. So yes, right off the bat between our bass and our tenor, the first voice type that we'd be looking at, we have parallel motion. And so that would be something we're gonna try to avoid, and that would be called an error. We're gonna say number one, parallel octaves. There we go. What about moving to our next chord? Now, again, on the quiz, or I'm sorry, the exam, there could be more that you would wanna look, but since for this assignment, there's only one thing wrong with each, chord progression. Alright, B flat, G, D, to E flat, B flat, G, G. Alright, voice pair one, oblique motion, voice pair two, oblique motion, and then tenor, or bass to soprano, B flat to D, moving in contrary motion to E flat to G, those are thirds. Still good. Tenor, alto, is that parallel motion? What's that called? Static. Yeah. Starts with those. Yeah, you're right. Close. Static motion, so that wouldn't be parallel. B flat to D, again oblique motion. Oblique motion with our soprano. So I don't think we have any parallel or contrary motion issues. Direct, no, because we're moving in the opposite direction, unacceptable. Spacing error, almost, but it's an octave, so that's so good. I don't think they have this as the only thing that's incorrect about this, and it's not really incorrect because it's not what we're doing right now, is that they don't double the root. The third is doubled instead. But again, that's not really considered an error. So I think it's okay. Yay. Alright, moving to to our next chord. E flat, B flat, G, G to C, G, C, E flat. Yeah, leave it.
Parallel fifths between the bass and the contour.
Right off the bat, again, yeah. Parallel fifths right here. Let's see, that's. That's number 2. Alright, correct. Going to our next chord. C, G, C, E flat, E flat, C, G, C. Any issues there?
Spacing.
Where?
The G is more than enough away from the C.
Yeah, right here is the spacing issue. So, that's a problem. Spacing number 8. Yes. Alright. E flat, C, G, C, F sharp, D, A, B. Actually see 2 errors, I don't think they're gonna have both of them. It's normal with a lesson.
There, the parallel fifths between the tenor and the alto. C, G, D, F.
C to G, D to A. Yep. There's also actually 2 more.
Parallel octaves.
Parallel octaves between our tenor and our soprano. Usually, if the bass is moving up by step and you have the top voices moving in the same direction as the bass, you will always have parallel octaves and you will always have parallel fifths. Because whatever voices are at an octave, if they're moving both by step, they're gonna stay octaves apart. Or if they're a fifth apart, they're gonna move by step too. So, yeah, looks like we have both, so I'm not sure which one is gonna choose. The other error occurs, which is a little bit trickier to find, and it's not on this list, is the E flat in the bass goes up to an F sharp, which is our augmented second. And again, we want to avoid that. So let's go with parallel octaves and see what happens. Alright, and then maybe this is parallel fifths. No. I think this is parallel. It's saying both of them are right. Alright, so then this one must be going to the next chord. The F sharp down to D, D down to A down to F sharp, D down to E. Then we get this voice pair, bass and tenor, with a 6, moving to a fifth, similar motion, bass and alto, a third apart, moving to a third apart, parallel thirds, bass and soprano, oblique, tenor and alto a fifth apart to a sixth apart, similar motion, and then oblique with the soprano. Alto, soprano, oblique motion. Soprano stays, so that wouldn't be a direct fifth or a direct octave. I didn't see any space here, I think we're okay. So we'll change this to okay, and we got red. Alright, now moving from the second last chord to the last chord. These two chords here. There is, I didn't see an error. You got it?
Is it finally gonna be the unacceptable unequal fifths?
Oh, where do you see that?
I thought it was gonna be the last thing, John. That was a base reaction when I saw it.
Oh, no, that's not actually it, okay.
Parallel octaves or contrary octaves?
Contrary octaves in what choices?
Bass and soprano?
Yes. So the bass is on a D, soprano's on a D, they're moving in opposite direction, contrary, but they stay at an octave apart. There's your contrary octaves. Number 5. Alright, and then the last chord, I think the question mark is there if there's, since it's not moving to another chord, there wouldn't be any kind of a like voice leading issue, but there could be a spacing error, but it doesn't look like it is, so I'd say it's okay.
Can you go over the rules for octaves and fifths by contrary motion again?
Yeah, they're basically the same as a parallel fifth or a parallel octave. You have two voices that are an octave apart, they move to the next chord, they're still an octave apart, they're just moving in contrary motion rather than parallel.
So there are no stipulations for oblique bass or soprano or anything else again?
No, it could be any of the voices, yeah. Alright. Good review. Questions about this? Do we wanna do another one for review, or are we good, or we move on to something else? Oh, I know what we can do for review. This one I might have to kinda come up with off the top of my head. Let's say we're in the key of E flat, chords progression. And we have melody. Alright. No. Alright, so here's our melody. I have a lot of errors in my melody. Let's see if we can remember what errors criticize the melody. Yeah, Cody,
We
with
have two focal points.
two focal points. So I have an E flat here and an E flat here. We need one high point on that A. Down here, two focal points. So my other voice. Liam.
Is it the leap without changing direction,
Okay, where,
the very beginning.
yeah, here we have a leap of a fifth. If it's bigger than a fourth, you have to change direction before and after. Since there is no before, it has to change after, and it doesn't do that. So I would maybe circle the leap or all three, or be next to it. Leap, not left. You say in opposite direction, or even just not left correctly would work for me. As long as you have some, again, some explanation that left correctly tells me that you understand that it needs to be moving in the opposite direction. But,
It's not conjoint, there's only two stepwise, it's two examples of stepwise.
yeah,
motion and
yeah,
all.
I could give that to you. So you could say, just put C somewhere nearby and say, contour too jumpy or needs to be stepwise, something like that. Many loops. You know, that number?
I think this is right. At the beginning of the second measure, you hit the 7th scale degree, but you don't resolve it upwards.
Right. So D is scale degree 7. And it doesn't resolve to 1. So here you could just put 7 to 1. If you want to put leading tone doesn't resolve, something along those lines, that would work. Yeah, I have a lot of errors. I think there's still, I think there's 2 more. I'm trying to remember where that, I know it's 4. Oh, no. Oh yeah, there's at least 2. Joey?
A flat to D, augmented fourth.
Yep. A flat to D is an augmented fourth. No augmented intervals. Got it?
Yeah. The E flat, the very first one, is a non-chord tone.
Right. F chord, 2 chord in the key of E flat is F, A flat, C. E flat is not one of those notes. NCT, non-chord tone. I think that's all the errors. Could be more. All right, questions about criticizing the melody? You'll have to do that for the exam. The rest of the exam, besides doing this and what we did previously, will consist of you writing out some voice lead, whether the bass is given to you or it looks like this, where you still have the chord progression, which is essentially the same as the bass given to you. So that as long as you study those, you should be fine on the exam. Yeah.
Are there going to be any examples of writing with figure bass, or is that all relegated to the previous exam?
Yeah, figure bass is important. I don't personally feel like it's important enough to be on an exam. Because I Yeah, cause that's all we've talked about, yeah. Anything else about the exam?
Well, I remember something. Yeah. Cody, you had a question?
I was gonna start asking questions about 32, but we can talk about this class first.
Yeah, but, I just remembered, at the end of class, or if you're leaving early, make sure you sign up, this is for next Monday. Class time, so I have them scheduled for every 10 minutes. Start at 9:15, and you're on the first stop, so I gave Andrew the first time from 9:50 to 9:45. But then, and so next Monday, you only need to come in for your 10-minute time, and that's it. Just bring in your Corel project. We'll discuss the final, how you did on the exam. And if I have, like I said, if I have time, I can grade the Corel project. If you do well, it definitely makes my grading time go a lot faster. If you don't do well, then it takes me a lot longer to grade it, so just do good on it and you get it right back. Hey, any questions on the work I just passed that to you?
Oh, did you get my text?
I haven't gotten it yet. I'll go up after class.
Okay.
and check it out. Okay, see how much time we got? Oh, we got 10 after 4, but it's 10 after 10, okay. Question about theory 2, sir?
Yeah, so, in thinking more about voice leading and everything else, in theory 2, in addition to exploring 7th chords and whatnot, is it dabble in like non-chord tones
Yeah.
and stuff, and,
Yep.
Different root positions
Yep.
and all those types of things?
Yep.
And I guess what other, generally, like, non-diatonic chords?
Eventually, my goal, like, again, depending on how fast or how much we get with material, it's basically, we start off right where we left off here. We get through, first inversion triads, second inversion triads. We talk about, a little bit about form, with the, smaller forms. And how pieces are put together, and cadences, and then, non-chord tones, 7th chords. Usually class wraps up around there, but I try to at least have one discussion on, or 2 classes on, chords that are non-diatonic. That's again where it gets really fun as well. Usually, I think we do get through secondary dominance, I should say that. But then after that point, we don't really get into modulations, unfortunately. But that, all of that is in the textbook though. Yeah, that's about it. We get about halfway through the textbook at that point. We can move along a little bit faster too, because by the time everybody gets into theory 2, if you made it to theory 2, it means you know the information, and then you can kind of move a little bit quicker. One last thing I wanna get, introduced to you guys today, even though it seems kinda weird to be introducing something new on the last day of class. This will not be on the exam though, but we have some time. And say, at least say I introduced it before the end of the semester, is part writing, for 3-part textures, because we did not do any examples this semester, everything has been 4-part. And again, with 3-part, in some ways it's easier, because there's one less note, or one less voice you have to worry about. In other cases, it's a little bit trickier, because there are no like tried and true methods that you have to like stick to. It's kinda, everything's up in the air. So we're gonna go all the way back to the beginning of this chapter here and talk about 3-part textures for root position part writing with repeated roots. Now for 3-part texture, again, very few rules, very few methods, just a couple of things to keep in mind. The 5th of the triad is often omitted in 3-part texture. We've already talked about that. If you're gonna omit the 5th, then an incomplete triad, which is omitting the 5th, we usually have the root double. Doesn't mean you have to, but usually it is. That's it. The final 1 chord may consist of a tripled root. So you have no other chord tones, only the root in that final 1 chord. That can work. And then once again, this rule we've talked about before with 4-part, never double the leading tone. Because if you have a leading tone doubled, the result is that both notes want to go up to 1, and what you end up with is parallel octaves by doing that. So never double the leading tone. Otherwise, like say for 3-part textures of roots that are the same, it's the same as 4-part, where you just arpeggiate freely with the voices. And just try to avoid spacing errors, try to avoid voice crossing, that kind of stuff. For roots that are a 4th or 5th apart for 3-part writing, again, not a whole lot of information here. More flexible nature of 3-part writing makes it possible to distill a few conventional methods, as was done for 4-part textures. Remember that each chord must contain a root and a third. Observe convention of spacing. Aim for smooth voice leading instead of complete chords. And that's some good advice. If you can avoid having a voice jump around just so that you have a complete chord, if it makes sense for that voice just to move by step, and then the next chord is incomplete, maybe that's better than having a complete chord and having that voice jump around all the time. Remember, the style is to get the smoothest type of voice leading as possible. But yeah, I mean, that makes what we study with 4-part texture for chords that are 4th or 5th apart. Again, this is like nothing, piece of cake, right? It's just, again, you just have to really double check, triple check, and make sure you don't have parallel octaves, you don't have parallel this, all that good stuff that we just went over. Roots that are 3rd or 6th apart, there is a little caveat here. So when most of the time when the bass moves a 3rd or 6th, it's not really a problem. Again, you can just make sure you have a complete chord or incomplete chord. You have the right chord tones. You don't have any 5th or parallel 5th, all that stuff. So here we have a F chord, F A C. Moving to a D chord, D F A. So you have F, the F is doubled, and an A, omit the C. The next chord is D, F and A. Your 2 common tones stay right where they're at. Here you have an F, C, and A, so the C is in the chord, going to a D, F, A. The A stays, C moves. Here we have a F, A, C going to an A chord, A, E, and C. Where it gets tricky, or one little caveat, I guess, is where you have a 1 chord going to a 3 chord, And if the 3 chord is not a complete chord, the 3 chord can kind of sound like it's still a 1 chord in group position, or I'm sorry, in first inversion. And it doesn't make sense until you really kind of hear it. Because moving from a 1 chord to a 1 chord in first inversion is a very common chord progression. Maybe up to here. Here. Right, that's a really common chord progression. If I omit the F out of both chords, still sounds like the same chord progression, right? But that middle chord, there's no F in this chord. Still sounds like an F chord though. Now if I add the E to my A chord, the second chord, now it sounds fuller, right? It sounds still could go to a 4. So that's where the confusion can kind of come in, is what they're showing you in letter E and F here on the board, is that you have an F A C chord going to an A C. So is this a 3 chord, minor 3 chord, or is it a 1 chord in first inversion? Orally, it's hard to tell listening to it. And you know, and if you had to analyze this, say you had a piece of music and you were asked to analyze something, you either answer, I guess, could be the case, because you really wouldn't know unless you hear. So the only way the 3 chord you can tell it's really a 3 chord is if the E is a complete chord. So the caveat is, if the bass is moving up a third, a 1 chord to a 3 chord, then make sure the 3 chord is a complete chord. And this really only occurs in 3-part texture, because in 4-part texture, you will always have complete chords. You always have a fifth in there. You double the root, third, fifth. But in 3-part writing, we don't always have every chord tone. So that's where it gets a little bit trickier. This is probably the trickiest part about 3-part writing, is this little bit of information. And so again, moving forward, you might just want to make sure that, you know, this page is kind of page 86, where this is listed. Highlight this little section just as something else to reference. And we'll review it next semester when we start theory 2. So that's really the only tricky thing about 3-part writing. When we move to chords that are a second apart for 3-part writing, again, they actually suggest that if you have 1 chord that's complete and the bass moves up by step, make that next chord incomplete. And that will create the smoothest type of texture that you could have. Or if the first chord is incomplete and the bass moves up by or down by step, make the next chord complete. And just alternate between the two, and that's kind of the best system to go to. 7 goes to 1, you got the 5 to 6, the septic progression can occur with 3-part writing as well, gotta watch out for that. Remembering that 7 always goes to 1. But really for 3-part texture, that's about it. Again, no like specific methods you have to remember or try to commit to memory or follow through with. It's just make sure that the chords are complete, or you have the right chord tones, and you don't have any spacing or any of those nasty errors that we talked about. Questions about 3-part writing? Again, if we were going to do it on an exam, I would go through a lot of examples of this, but we're not going to do that, so I'd like to actually kind of do give you, again, a little bit of teaser for next semester. The rest of chapter 6 is also very interesting, but we're not gonna get to it today. We will get to it in, one of the, first couple of weeks of theory 2, and that's instrumental ranges and transpositions, so actually scoring for instruments. Now, that gets a little bit tricky too with theory because, if you were, that could be a whole class. They have classes at colleges called scoring and arranging, and that's really where you learn. So it's just more of an introduction to the concept of writing for instruments, understanding that some instruments you do have to transpose for. In the back of the books, appendix A, there's a chart that lists all the instruments in the orchestra and their transpositions. So, or you can Google it. There's some good charts online as well. But if you're, thinking about arranging or composing, you will need to have somewhat of an understanding of this, although most programs do it automatically for you now. So that makes it really helpful. But saxophones especially get a little bit trickier. Alto sax transposes is an E flat instrument as opposed to tenor sax, which is an E flat instrument. So when I'm playing with piano players, I usually just tell them, give me a concert key and I'll do the transposing in my head. Because the piano players give me something that's transposed, they've done it wrong enough times where I'm often leery of their transposition skills. And it's no offense to them, if you don't play the instrument, you're not used to how it transposes. And so a lot of people make mistakes with that. It's easy to do, but that's one of the things we'll talk about. And if you want to read through it and kind of get a little idea about it, not much in the book about it, but there's some. Harmonic progression, that's the part, like I mentioned, this little teaser for next semester. Chapter 7 is pretty cool. Talks about how chords are put together, moving from one chord to the next chord. If we look at this example here, we'll probably do this again next semester as well, so do the same exact thing. But if we listen to, if I play the first line, the G major, here's the progression. Here's the second line. That's like this. What do we notice about the difference between the or chord progressions?
The second one felt very unresolved and kind of meandering.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Anybody else ever feel that way about the progression? Okay. What was how would you, as opposed to the first one, which was called pop, or sounded pop? It wasn't meandering, it sounded like what?
It's like a sensible progression, and you can kind of tell this looking at the soprano, very at the top, right? The top harmony part, and it was resolved, of course, having a one there.
Okay, so resolution, going to the one, it starts on the one, hits a little bit of 5, back to 1, 7, back to 1, moving away 4 to 5, but gets it back to 1 again. The second progression didn't even start out with 1, started with 4, so then it's like, what key am I even in? Because it doesn't give you, like, you're not even starting at home, you're starting out in left field. And then it never really even gets to 1 at all through the progression. Did it sound bad? I think that's kind of subjective, whether that sounds bad or not, but it didn't sound like it really landed, like you said, it kind of meandered. It felt like we were kind of walking in circles, but not really going in any specific direction with it. So the purpose of this, playing this, is to show that, yeah, chords, there are specific progressions, and it's sort of like what we're used to hearing. So you can kind of, again, say these are popular progressions, start with the popular progressions, and then you can elaborate on that, right? So certain things that happen, certain types of chord progressions, again, it's kind of skipping ahead here. The authors, again, really like their charts and graphs, and this looks really confusing, but popular chord progression, again, I'll get into more explanation of all this, so I'm moving a little bit more, is moving around the circle of fifths, or the fourths. So jazz players like to call it circle of fourths, classical players like to call it circle of fifths. Same thing, I don't know which direction is going. If I'm in the key of C, which is my 1 chord, typically, what chord have I talked about that usually wants to go to 1? 7 is one of them. What's the one other one that I mentioned? 5. 5 often wants to go to 1. And in the key of C, that would be G. So 5 to 1. Now, a chord that often sets up the 5 chord is a fifth away from fifth up or a fourth down from G, which is what? It's a fifth up from G.
D.
What's that?
D.
Yeah, D. D in the key of C is my 2 chord. So here's my 1 chord. G. Let's go C. If I add in the 2 chord, the D, typical would want to go down to G. And then resolve C. What's a fifth above D?
A.
A. A is scale degree 6 in the key of C. So now we back it up to the 6. To the 2. To 5. 1. Those 4 chords make up a ton of tunes right there. Or you can start on the 2 chord and then go to your 6, then to your 2. You can start on the 5 and then go to your 6. And 5. You can start on 1, the 6, the 2, the 5. So even starting on, not always starting with C, but starting on A, starting on B, you could get multiple different types of progressions as well, just from starting point with those. Let's see. We back up from A, or go up a bit from A, you get what? E. when that happens, a lot of times we're gonna find that you can interchange a chord that's, if it has two common tones, they're often used in the same function, the same way. So a 3 chord, instead of a 1, still could go to A. And then eventually maybe you want to resolve to 1. In jazz, we would call that a turnaround because it keeps going. Or a tap. And so you get to the end of the song, so you're like. And instead of going right to 1, you go to a 3. And then you keep it going a little bit. And then maybe one last time. And then resolve. Yeah.
So all of these are basically a fifth from the original,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense.
In a sense, yeah, or from the chord before, yeah.
Okay. So whatever your 1 chord is, everything's gonna be a fifth off of the, whatever the fifth is from the original, or from the,
Yeah, from the root. So
Root chord.
C, the fifth away from C is G.
okay, and then, yeah, then a
That's the
fifth,
chord.
then a fifth, then a fifth.
Yeah.
So how many fifths would we have? Is it just 5 total? Is it
Well,
just
we're going, how many notes are in a scale, in a major scale?
7?
So that's how many of them we're gonna get to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so a fifth up from E is B. Now in C major, B chord is gonna be diminished. Doesn't get used as often in, like, it's just not as commonly used. It can be used though. You can still start. So if you went from a 1 chord to a 7 chord, to a 3, to 6, to 5, it could work. It's just not gonna be as common. And a fifth away from B, fifth up is F sharp if you're thinking perfect fifth, but because we're in the key of C, it's gonna be F natural, and that's our 4 chord. It is less likely for a 4 to go to a 7, but it can happen. So you could actually have a song that does this complete circle of fifths. Start on the 1, to the 4, to the 7, to the 3, to the 6, to the 2, to the 5, to 1. It's a very, very common progression. I'll play you a couple of examples here in a minute. But if you notice again this chart, the reason why, again, this gets really confusing, but if you follow the arrows, 3 going to 6, going to 2, going to 5, going to 1, there's your circle of fifths. Now they have a few exceptions where the 4 can double as a 2. So rather than going 6 to 2, you can go 6 to 4 to 5 to 1, and that gives you another option now. You got 6 to 4 to 5. Sorry, 6 to 4 to 5. Yeah.
What's the meaning of the term, hickory-dickory?
Hickory third is a special type of sound that you get when you're in a minor key. During the Baroque period, it would have been less acceptable at that time. It would sound dissonant to end something in a minor key. So the whole thing would be minor, and then you resolve the last chord to major. That's what that hickory is. So that's why here we have like exceptions, I guess, and the arrows going. That's all stuff we'll talk about next semester. Don't worry about all that stuff. Right now, if you like going into summer and you want to kind of ponder this stuff, this would be a great place to start. You go on like YouTube and look up videos about circle fifths and like about harmony and composing. you'll probably see a lot of great stuff about this. Here's some, examples of songs. This is on, I think I already have this posted, I should already have posted Unit 3. I think it's available, yeah, Circle 5th example. Maybe it's down there. Okay. If we look at the chords that are here, so this is in G minor. So you got a 1 chord G minor, and then it's a first version C chord. So G to C is the root movement. That's up a fourth or down a fifth. C, the root is F. Then B flat, then E flat, then A, then D, and then G. Right? So if we create this circle but in G minor, so G is our 1, our 4 is C, our 7 is F sharp, our 3 is major, that's B flat, our 6 is E flat, that's also major. 2 is diminished, that's A, and then our 5 is major. So 1, 4, that's actually the lowered 7, 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. So remember in minor, we got the option of having the raised 7 or the lowered 7, which creates a major. So we'll talk about that chord a lot more too in theory too. So that gives you that whole progression. Yeah.
So is it the same, I guess the same Roman numerals? Is it gonna be the same pattern for whatever we pick?
Whatever key you're in, yeah.
Okay.
Let's listen to this. guitar players, you guys are working on, you guys bring in a studio class, what song that you've been working on has the circle fifths progression? Not coming to mind, not ringing a bell? Right? Autumn leaves. Circle of fifths all the way through autumn leaves. Autumn leaves. Depending on what key you do it in. I often do it in B flat major. So the first chord is C minor chord, which is your 2. Second chord is an F7 chord, which is your 5, 7. And it goes to 1. And then it goes to E flat, which is 4. And then it goes to A diminished, which is 7. Then it does something a little bit interesting here. It goes to a D7, which is 3, but it's dominant. And then it goes to our 6. Minor 6 chord, which is G minor. So it starts on the 2, 5, 1, 6, 4, 7, 3, 6, back to 2 again. It goes all the way around our circle fifths. The only exception then is that 3 chord becomes a dominant because basically at this point we've modulated to the key of G minor, which A is the 2 of G minor, D is the 5 of G minor, and we get to 1 of G minor. So the A chord acts like kind of a pivot chord. It's in both, it's in E flat major and in G minor. So that bridges us into G minor, which is where we get that 3 chord that's dominant instead of the 3 chord being typical minor chords or in a major key. Other popular songs that we hear the circle of fifths. How do this? I think the guy sings it. He does okay. We'll go with
This thing right here is called the circle of fifths. Or, if you think you're cute, the circle of fourths. A lot of people think this is just something you learn about on the first day of music theory and then forget about it. The circle of fifths is actually used all the time in songs we all know and love, like these. Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars, let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. I love you like a love song, baby. I love you like a love song, baby. I love you like a love song, baby. And I can hear it repeat. Oh, no, no, no.
a small portion of the circle of fifths. Some of them use like the whole thing. Some use only little bits and pieces of it, like 3 or 4 chords. But yeah, I mean, using that as a basis of composition, great place to start if you're kind of thinking about writing your own music, and just kind of messing around with different combinations of chords within just the circle of fifths progression or fourths. Yeah, however you want to say. I always think of fourths because it's a fourth up to where you're going as opposed to a fifth back from where you were. I'm thinking about moving ahead, like again with the jazz players, that's kind of what we've always thought as circle of fourths progression as opposed to circle of fifths. Questions? Yeah.
So, just from I guess this, it really doesn't matter. Well, no, let me ask this first. I guess is there a specific order this has to go in? Because just from this example, it seems like he's kind of jumping around it. Like he'll.
Well, so if we're in the key of F, F is 1, but then he skips right to the E, which is 7.
Right, but what?
Then from there though, 7 to 3,
To 3, right.
up a 4th to D, which is the 6, up a 4th to G, which is 2, up a 4th to C, which is 5, and then it gets you back to F again. So there is like you do have to follow like a fourth up or 5th down.
Okay.
I mean, in order for it to be called a circle of fourths or 5th progression, doesn't mean like every pop song or every song you listen to follows this progression. Doesn't mean that it has to stay with this progression, but it's very common that you'll hear this progression somewhere in a song.
You said up a 5th?
Up a 4th, down a 5th. But you can do it the opposite way too. There's ways like so instead of up a 5th would be to G, up a 5th would be to D. Yeah, there's songs that do that as well. Just not as common as here. But yeah, again, chapter 7 does talk about variations and different other progressions other than just this progression. But this again, this is kind of our starting point on most times. Yeah,
I was just gonna say for the one that progressed like in fifths, wouldn't that be like Hey Joe, by Jimi Hendrix? It would be C, G, D, A, and then it stays on E.
sounds like it. Yeah. If that's the progression, I can't remember. I remember the song. I don't remember the progression. Yeah. The song I was thinking of is yeah, that song has that progression up a 5th rather than down a 5th. Yeah, there's others.
The Time Warp from Rocky Horror.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
No, I don't know that song as well. Oh, that one.
Yes.
That, alright, there we go. See, that's the cool thing about like these chord progressions. Soon as you start making that association with the song, then that progression kind of like locks in. And like if you're doing, say for oral skills class, and he makes you, instead of, like right now you're writing out, dictating melodies, what if he had to dictate chord progressions? Which is not uncommon to do for an oral skills class. So it's not always about what is that, like trying to hear every single note of the progression when you can already associate it, oh that sounds like time warp. Oh, so they must be doing this with the chord progression. And then all of a sudden like, you don't have to think about every single note and every single chord because you already kind of you're hearing what's happening as it's happening. You can almost predict what's going to come, what the next chord is going to be based on your past experience with that progression. So, and again, I do this all the time. I had a gig on Saturday night, play with the band, and I played with the band before, but again, a lot of these bands I play with, they pick the leader will just pick new songs randomly, and it's like, yeah, we're going to do this song instead, and I've never played that one, but let's give it a try. And you know, again, luckily for us, technology is beautiful and I can pull up changes on my phone, but even then, if I couldn't, I'd have to hear it. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's going from 1 to 5, or you like kind of hear, this is a typical progression, and then maybe there'll be like an unexpected chord in there, ooh, that's kind of cool, but alright, I see what you're doing, and then you just move on from there. That, once you kind of get a few songs sort of locked in and you know how those go, you can kind of match them up to any new song. You're like, oh, that's a little bit of this. I do that all the time. Like, so A-Train has, take the A-Train, common jazz tune, has a certain chord progression, but it's also very similar to the chord progression of the Girl from Ipanema. At least the beginning part of it. And then so like I get that sound of it in my head. So now anytime I hear like the beginning of, like say this progression to, I'm like, oh, that's just like A-Train, or that's just like Girl from Ipanema. Girl from Ipanema is A-Train is same type of progression, just in different keys. In the same way like with this, if you can hear I Will Survive in the song, there's a good chance it's going through the circle of fifths. Like if all of a sudden like you hear Mozart, or you hear Mozart, like that first Mozart example, there's the second example sounded almost exactly like all it is. And chances are the guy that wrote, it's a French guy that wrote it, would probably stole it from Mozart. I mean, probably studied Mozart as a connection there. So, yeah, this has been around for a long time. It's tried and true. Use it when you can, or start listening for it now. Maybe like over the summer, hopefully now you'll be like, oh yeah, theory class. I will survive it. Alright, so no homework for Wednesday. Study for the exam. Exam will be all class period on Wednesday. The entire time. Before you leave, sign up for a time for Monday, so that you come in and turn in your corral project assignment for me on Monday. If you have some of it done on Wednesday and you want me to look it over while you're taking the exam, I'm more than happy to look it over. And if you have homework to give me, I can collect that now. Set that up. It'll be the same day and same time as this.
Same room?
Same room. Yeah.
Wow, there we go. Do you have do you have like a newsletter or something to keep up with if we want to like see when you're playing over the summer?
No.
Just gotta listen to the wind.
Yeah. I should.
For the Gilbert Film Club, you know?
Yeah, right. No, and it's something that I think about all the time, like, I don't tell any of my online classes, like, what I'm doing and stuff like that, I'm sure, or even about LCC, like, I need to somehow figure a way to, like that. So it's not a lot of work for me, but easy to do, I don't know, that's the concept that I'm working for. But yeah, I'll be playing around, I don't have as much going on in May, but June, there's some salsa gigs around town. We'll be playing at the IStunnaB Jazz Festival, the Solstice Festival, June 21st, Saturday. We're going to be the closing group. Yeah, and then he put together a Hispanic music night at the Hannah Center on the 14th. Sort of June, yeah. That's gonna be, we're gonna be at it and a couple other, Latin groups. I'm gonna be playing at it. So some really cool salsa dancing and all that kind of stuff. for Wednesday. Alright, well, have a good,